All hope is not lost. Trust me, just really close. Welcome to another episode of Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel, joined by my good friend Mr. Nick Harris, who had the unfortunate reality of having to sit in a press box and watching one of the worst NFL games of the entire weekend and maybe the season already. Dallas Cowboys lose in Chicago 31-14, and it really wasn't that close. However, Nick, before we get into the game, you posted on social media yesterday one of the all-time great travel wins. And when I saw this, I'm like, that is my guy on a lot of different levels. So you need to share with me, even though it was a total L for the Cowboys, man, this weekend was a big W for you. So lay it on us.
Major win. I'll pull the curtain back behind the scenes a little bit. I was staying in downtown Chicago, and I was flying out of O'Hare. So if anyone's familiar with Chicago, O'Hare may as well be in Wisconsin with how far it is from downtown. So I wake up about an hour and a half before my flight takes off, and I'm like, oh, boy.
Whoa, wait.
Yeah,
this is good. I'm the guy who gets to the airport while the plane's pulling back from the gate.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I am typically the same way.
And it doesn't matter. So for you to wake up, now you're like a gold medalist. I'm talking to Michael Phelps right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like Rowdy. I'm Carl Lewis, and I'm clearly in the deep end of the pool on this one. You woke up 90 minutes before your flight leaves, and you're in downtown, and you have to get to O'Hare.
Yeah, so I had pressed the snooze button at about 7 a.m., and I guess I turned the alarm off. I turned the alarm completely off, so I wake up at 8:30, and I said some words that I can't say on this podcast, and so I threw everything in my duffel bag, called my Uber, and ran downstairs. And of course, I ran into the worst traffic that I could ever imagine. And I walk into the airport 35 minutes before my flight is ready to take off, and it's already boarding. It had already put on my app that it was boarding.
Right.
And I'm like, I have to have like the cleanest security line of all time right here, or else it's over. And I get through, and there was only 3 people in front of me in security. I was like, all right, perfect. Step 1. So I get through security, a breeze, 5 minutes, and then I walk to my gate, another 5 minutes, and I was at my gate. And from 10 minutes from the time I walked in to the time I got to my gate, I was there. And I was a little worried because there was such bad weather throughout the weekend in Chicago. I was like, oh my God, so many people's flights got pushed back. There's going to be a ton of people here. That was not the case. So I get to my gate, and I just kind of like walk to the front of the gate waiting on my group because it was about to get called. Like my group hadn't even been called yet, but it was group 5. I'm in group 6. And right before they called group 6, I had just turned the music down on my AirPods, and I heard them call over the intercom. They're like, the travel voucher option has just been increased to $1,100 for anyone who wants to volunteer. I said, and I walked right to the gate, or I walked right to the front desk, and I was like, yeah, when's the next flight? And they said, we can get you out of here at 11:54. I was like, I only have to wait 2 hours for $1,100. That is no problem at all. And I got the voucher. I have it on me, actually.
That is such a win.
Let's see. Yep. See that number right there, $1,100.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a major win for your boy these days.
That's because I flew Friday night. I had agreed like back in January. I don't even know when it was. So anyways, I was flying Friday night at a DFW, and I don't know if you heard about the travel delays that hit DFW on Friday.
Going out there, I had my flight canceled on Saturday morning, and so I had to fly into Milwaukee and then drive down to Chicago. It was a whole
wow.
Yeah,
that's rough. So I was in that whole just total disaster bleep show at DFW, and I was originally supposed to leave at 3:50. Keeps getting delayed, and this, that, and the other. And we're hearing all these rumors why it was delayed. Flight then says it's going to leave at 12 o'clock in the morning and get in at 1:40. And I'm like, this isn't going to leave. Nick, if you had seen the line, and I put the line, actually, I shot a video of it, and it's on StarTelegram.com and our Instagram page. I've been in some bad lines.
Yeah.
That there are certain instances that you go through as a traveler, and I've had a lot this year already, where it just makes you say, I don't want to leave my house anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're the same way, but my radius about flying keeps shrinking. Keeps changing in the sense it used to be, if it's a 3-hour drive, I'll just drive it. or whatever it was. And now it's like I'm almost up to 7 hours. I'm like, I'd rather drive 7 hours than risk flight delays at any airport. But what you did restores my faith in everybody.
Yeah.
What a great day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
blessings do happen. And so
I'm telling you.
I spread the blessings to you, Mac.
Yes.
And Candy is expressing a travel issue she's had. I'll give these blessings off to everybody. I'm giving them out.
Wow. So Candy Bolden, by the way, our producer, congratulations to Candy. She was married over the weekend in Colorado. So shout out to Candy Bolden. She puts a post up here. We've got a little chat site that we can communicate, although I can't type into it. She said she was an unaccompanied minor and she got lost inside of LAX.
Yeah, that's tough.
Candy, I don't know how anybody found you in that airport. I'm like, that's not even an airport. That's like a country. So I don't know how you were found, but congratulations on being discovered when you were a kid and for your wedding over the weekend. Speaking of weekend, let's get into it. This was an ugly one. I know you and I both thought they weren't going to win, but I don't think we thought it was going to go down the way it went down. Caleb Williams looked like the greatest quarterback who ever played the game. It really helped when you don't ever have any pressure. Caleb Williams throws for 298, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Dallas commits 4 turnovers to Chicago's 0. And this was one of those games that I think we thought it was possible, but for some reason, I don't think we thought it was going to look like that. You were there. Give it to me straight. Scale of 1 to 10 on the ugly chart. How ugly are we talking?
Yeah, we're talking a good 8 on this one. If you had told me that one of these teams would be getting blown out, I would have thought it would have been the other way. The Cowboys just have too much talent on the offensive side of the ball to not score an entire half of football. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into some offensive points. I want to start with the defense, though, because that's where the core of the issues start with this team is this secondary. Oh, my goodness. When is enough going to be enough? And you look at this secondary and you start making some changes. That's the question for me. And, those are starting to be the questions that are being asked to Brian Schottenheimer, to Jerry Jones. They were asked to Matt Eberflus last week about certain personnel changes. Do you ever consider it? Why is Donovan Wilson playing a 1 high safety? And he says, Donovan's been great for us. We like what he can do as a field safety, in which case I question his job title. I mean, there's a lot of things that play into this defensive meltdown that we've seen the last couple of weeks. And look, Brian Schottenheimer said after the game, we have to simplify things. We have to make things better. And then yesterday they had kind of a come to Jesus meeting with ownership and the coaching staff, and they plan on making, quote, changes on the defensive side of the ball. What does that look like? Who knows? It could be, hey, we're going to change our backup defensive tackle. Or it could be, hey, maybe a starting safety gets rotated out. I think that's probably what needs to be had for the greatest possibility of change. I don't feel like either of these safeties are benefiting this defense whatsoever. I think they need a change at both spots, certainly in Donovan Wilson's spot, but I'm not sure that happens.
So Donovan Wilson struck me as a player, and I really like the guy. But Donovan, and I wrote this in the column after the game, Donovan Wilson needs Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was a coach whose scheme recognized Donovan's skill set and talents and took advantage of it and tried to reduce the number of times he was put in vulnerable positions not to be as good as he could be. And Donovan, as a result, was a pretty good player. I don't know. The problem with Donovan has been the same one from pretty much since day one, which is he's not great in coverage. He's not awful, but he's not great in coverage. Well, this is a different scheme. And there's a lot of times you see with coaches is that they try to take the same guy and make him work in their scheme. And sometimes they just don't. Sometimes. And with Wilson, and we saw it against the Giants, it was awful against the Giants. It was awful against the Bears, which is these big plays where guys are running free. And it would be one thing if they were running free against man coverage, right? You would understand it. Guy blows by somebody, guy trips, whatever, you get it. But in a zone, the whole idea, which is what Eberflus runs, the whole idea is they're in front of you. Receivers are getting behind these guys like it's nothing, which tells me they're either stupid. And I hear a coach say, well, we need to simplify things. That tells me they think these guys are dumb. They might be. They might be. I don't mean to be cruel about it, but they might be. They might just not be bright enough to figure out the communications skill set necessary to say, this guy's yours, this guy's, because it happens so fast. Okay. Or flat out, they're just not good enough. And for me, I'm looking at some of these guys and I'm like, they're just not good enough. I don't care what scheme it is. And I think that's where they are. So, Nick, talk me off the ledge. They can move these things around, and I think it'll get a little bit better. I don't think it's going to be this awful for the next 14 weeks or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
What changes can they really possibly make where we're going to see just these massive improvements on the back end, especially if they can't get home with their pass rush as it is?
The changes would be playing into their strengths, which the strengths would be playing more man coverage at the end of the day. And they did play more man coverage against the Bears. There was one play, though, early in the first quarter, second drive, that the Cowboys defense was out on the field. They were running a man coverage, cover two man set, and Trayvon Diggs goes to jam Rome Odunze, slips on the turf on the grass, at Soldier Field, and Odunze runs right by him for a 35-yard touchdown. And so the teaching point on that play was, hey, Diggs needs to give him a little bit more breathing room to be able to run with him. I have a take about Diggs, and I'm going to get off here in a second, but pause.
Because I was going to ask you about him, but go ahead.
Yeah, pause on that, and ask me about that. The big question right now is it scheme or personnel? The one thing that tells me that I'm leaning toward personnel being the issue is you look at the 5 defensive backs that have been playing over the course of the last 2 weeks. Trayvon Diggs, Kyer Elam, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and Reddy Stewart. Reddy Stewart has been the most consistent guy out of those 5.
Did you mention Kyer Elam at all on there?
I did, yes.
Oh, he was okay. I missed. Okay, go ahead.
What is the advantage that Reddy Stewart has over those other defensive backs is that he's played in this system for the last 12 months, going back to his time in Chicago last year with Matt Eberflus. That tells me he understands the scheme. And so if he understands the scheme and you have a player understanding the scheme and he's the best one playing out of that group of 5, that tells me it's not a scheme issue, it's a personnel issue, and that you have 4 guys who are continuing to fail to understand what their responsibilities are, what the communication checks are. The pass-off responsibilities in zone coverage is something that is just being exploited to the umpteenth degree. That tells me that there's more personnel issues than scheme issues. I'll let you get to the Diggs part when I talk about addressing the personnel issues.
Well, before we get into Trayvon Diggs, because you mentioned the one play where he fell down. Guy falls down, he falls down. Trayvon Diggs' margin for error right now is not huge. Now, they're not going to cut him today. They're not going to bench him or anything like that. But I'm talking about long term. And we're going to get into this later. But when I look at this secondary right now, and I know it's early, blah, 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 they're missing a guy. And obviously it's Deron Bland. He's going to come back maybe this week, maybe.
That's the plan.
Yeah. That's the plan. So Deron Bland will come back. So that's a help. The other one that I look at who would have made a difference, is Jordan Lewis. And they let Jordan Lewis walk in the offseason to Jacksonville, where he's doing really well. And I hated to see that. I was thrilled for him. I hated to see that because when I looked at that secondary, I'm like, you need proven guys. And Jordan Lewis was a proven guy. And I know there's some debate about this, Nick, about what he could do for this team. But I'm sorry, convince me if I'm wrong, but tell me if I'm wrong about this one. Jordan Lewis would help this secondary out a lot right now.
Yeah, I don't know how much he could, though, as a nickel corner, right? Because Reddy Stewart, he's the nickel corner. He's played well, and it hasn't really done a whole lot. Now, would he be playing to the level of Jordan Lewis? Probably not. But, I mean, he's made tackles for loss in the run game. He will step up and lay a hat on a running back, no problem, in a run lane. His zone responsibilities have been super clean. Probably not super, really clean in the first 2 games.
So good, solid, fine.
Yeah. And especially in comparison to the rest of the secondary. I'm not sure, and I just had this conversation with somebody in the press box after the game. It's funny you bring up Jordan Lewis. I'm not sure how much more help Jordan Lewis would have brought to this team.
Well, here's why I liked him. He was an adult in a room. He was a pro. And that's not saying the other guys aren't. It's not, because I don't know him. I think Donovan Wilson's all right. Malik Hooker's been around for a while. Jordan is a guy who I thought was a pro and understood things. And to me, he was reliable, and there's value in that. And I'm not saying the other guys are, kick him on the street bums, but at least Jordan Lewis was a player that you would look at and say, I'm not going to have to worry about him. These other guys, Like, I don't know about this. And granted, he wasn't going to win you a game, but I do believe this. Some of it to a degree would have improved a little bit with Jordan. However, you mentioned it. We've talked about this guy a lot for a variety of reasons, highs and lows since he walked in the door here. Amazing season a few years ago where he intercepts every ball and returns all of them for touchdowns. And that is the development of Trayvon Diggs. Nick, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think in training camp, everyone wanted to see Trayvon Diggs make it back for week 1. And by everyone, I mean everybody in the Cowboys organization. And he worked really hard to get there. And I credit Trayvon Diggs for that, because you talk to anybody behind the scenes and everyone was like, I think it's going to be a couple weeks into the season, 2-3 weeks, and then we'll look at it. He worked really hard in Oxnard and when they got back to Frisco to make sure that he was ready to go when week 1 came around, to take the practice field and then be ready to go in week 1 against the Eagles. I give him credit for that. Although, looking at it 3 weeks into the season, I don't think he's ready. Did
he come back too early?
I think he came back too early. I don't think he came back too early from the injury perspective. I think he came back too early as far as ramping up into game speed, because he got cleared for week 1. He practiced twice, and then they threw him out for 20 snaps against the Eagles. And then Deron Bland got hurt, and they had to turn around and throw him into week 2 and play him a full load of snaps. And that's the reality we're looking at. So when you see him slip on a man coverage jam that he's done well at in the past, you see that as, okay, it's because he hasn't played football in 9 months. And that's the reality of it. When Deron Bland comes back this week, I would exchange him out for Trayvon Diggs.
Will they do that? That's a big move. Will they do that?
I don't know. And they talk about making changes. I don't think they'd make that drastic of a change, and they continue to speak confidence into Trayvon Diggs. So I don't see that happening. I think they would look toward Kyer Elam before they look at Trayvon Diggs. But it wouldn't be a permanent move for me, but it would be a couple of weeks just to be like, hey, let's give Trayvon some time. Let's get him back refining the skills that we know he's good at, and then get him back out on the field in week 6 in a starting environment when he's ready to do something like that.
I tell you what, when it comes to evaluating Trayvon Diggs, and we've done this now twice in his career where he's come back from, a pretty significant injury, and it's clear he's slowed by it still for like he was the last time. I think you have to evaluate him, I'll say week 8, anything week 8. If he stays healthy and they're doing the ramp up thing now as opposed to when they should have done it, then I think you really evaluate him. But either way, you've mentioned it a few times in what you've written for the Star Telegram and here on Cowboys Overtime. I mean, he better get it. I mean, it better get right for him quick. Otherwise, they're going to move on from him in the offseason. The other part of this game that struck me that was so odd, I don't know if you had a chance to do it. The statistics are a little misleading, because if you look at the overall numbers, you would say, well, this was probably a 3-point game. In terms of total overall yardage, in terms of the Cowboys running the ball, time of possession, the Cowboys had it for 4 or 5 more minutes than the Bears did. And then you get into the ugly ones. And I think even this one was a little misleading. Dallas has 4 turnovers. Well, a couple of those were just, they're just pressing the ball because they're chasing the game late and they're having to put the ball up in vulnerable spots just to take a chance. And so that's a little misleading, but it's, a turnover margin that's 4-0. That one's pretty ugly. But the other that was the most disappointing. If you're Dallas, you gave up 8 of 14 on 3rd down conversions, and then 1 of 1 on 4th down. And conversely, you're 3 of 11 on 3rd down. That speaks volumes about what they're doing in the front 7. And we talked about it before. Man, I know they're getting Jadeveon Clowney. He wasn't active for last week. I know he's coming in, but man, these linebackers can't do anything. And that's when we talk about changes, like what change can they do there to get some production from these guys? Because 8 of 14 is terrible.
Yeah, I would exchange Maris Leofau for Jack Sanborn at this point in time. I think Damone Clark has played well enough to be one of those 3 guys for now. But I think Maris Leofau is probably deserving of the Sanborn snaps just because I think he has better instincts. He can play the pass way better, and they need a linebacker that can be athletic in those zone coverages. Sanborn's a liability at this point, and whenever you start talking about seeing changes defensively and Leofau's not a part of that, then I think you're just extenuating the problem.
All right. Speaking of a problem, apparently me, the host, is a problem, as Candy Bolden, emboldened by her marriage, now calls us out and says, hey, we're at 20 minutes on the first topic. When will you all wind down so we can move on to Matt Eberflus? Because apparently she hates the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. Nick, do the Dallas Cowboys have a Matt Eberflus problem?
Yeah, I mean, 3 weeks into the season, certainly. You look at 31st in the league in yards per play allowed, bottom 3 in the league in passing yards per game allowed. This has become a defense to where if you're playing them, any issue that you have offensively as a team, it's kind of the antidote. It's like, okay, this is our get right game. And, you look at this Chiefs offense that's trying to figure things out 3 weeks into the season. Maybe they're just trying to get to Thanksgiving and they understand that there's going to be a game that they can get right. I'm telling you, yeah, this defense, it feels like it's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole because you have, and I discussed this on the podcast last week, you have a lot of guys that were drafted to play into a man scheme and were developed under that man scheme under Dan Quinn and even to a level under Mike Zimmer a year ago, and then are being asked now to completely change everything that they've specialized during their career and play a majority zone scheme. And so I there's not a lot of benefit from that, I think. And, I put that on Eberflus. I do put it on the coaching, and Schottenheimer has mentioned it too. He's like, this is a coach's problem. We have to figure this out as a group. So I think, yes, if the current trajectory lays out for the rest of the year, I don't see how Eberflus is back in 2026.
Well, you mentioned it after the game that this looks like a repeat of 2020 all over again, where the defense was just horrible and a first-year defensive coordinator and Mike Nolan was fired after the season. The part to this, if people want like Cowboys history, is would they fire a coordinator mid-season? This is not something that the Cowboys have ever really done. Some teams will do that. I think it's typically a bad idea, but sometimes teams will make that kind of change mid-season, if for anything else, just to send a shock into the locker room. The last time I can really remember something like that was when Wade Phillips was the head coach. This was in 2009 or 10, maybe 7. I can't remember the year. And Brian Stewart was the defensive coordinator. And then suddenly Wade decides, I'm going to start calling the defenses, something that he did not tell us about until the defense started to play well. And then he said, I'm calling the defenses. And we're like, wait a minute, you didn't tell us that. He's like, I didn't? And he totally threw, he wanted to take the credit for it is what he wanted to do. Do you see, I thought it was ridiculous. Do you see any scenario, Nick, where, and I know it's early, it's not even a month, would they fire Matt Eberflus or demote him in season?
No, I don't think so. And Jerry Jones mentioned so many times last year during the Mike McCarthy debacle that, he'll never fire a head coach in the middle of the year. And he was asked on 105 Through the Fan on Tuesday morning, would he, is that same policy, derived to coordinators as well? He kind of ducked the question and he was like, every situation is different, blah, blah. But knowing the experience that this team has with Matt Eberflus, the respect that they have for Matt Eberflus, I think they let him ride it out for 18 weeks.
Well, it didn't take long for the Dallas Cowboys along this beautiful ride to start suffering serious injury. Last week, it was Deron Bland who was out, Cooper Beebe was out, and now they are going to live life without CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, their leading wide receiver and one of the best receivers in the game, suffered a really nasty ankle injury, an ankle sprain against the Bears. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Tyler Booker, the first-round pick rookie guard from Alabama, also is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. The replacements along the offensive line, Brock Hoffman did okay for Cooper Beebe. I think it's going to be, is it TJ Bass who will fill in for Tyler Booker? Is that right?
That's the expectation.
But I think you can kind of mitigate that a little bit, although those are significant losses. Brother, what are they going to do without 8-8?
Yeah, that's tough. And fortunately, I think this team is better equipped to deal with injuries this year than they were last year. Last year when CeeDee Lamb went down, it was, okay, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert. This year, at least they do have George Pickens available, who has been, a proven wide receiver one at a different stop in Pittsburgh. But there's only so much you can do without 88 because his versatility, his route running ability, his yards after catch ability, it's unique. It's why he's a top 5 receiver in this league, top 3 if you want to make the argument. But without him, this offense is going to have to get creative. And you add in the fact that they are losing yet another starting offensive lineman, it doesn't make things easy. And this offense is now, being, pinned into an interesting corner about, okay, the defense is not playing well. We have to score 30 points a game to compete in games. How do we do this without our best player? And that's going to be a really tough question for them to answer over the course of the next 2 to 4 weeks.
So what do they do? Because, I got to tell you, George Pickens hasn't exactly blown me away since he's come here. Now, I know there's, integration with the staff and the coach and the this and the that. But, I know he had a touchdown against the Giants. Nick, I haven't seen a lot from him.
Yeah.
So if is this going to force feed a trust issue and maybe accelerate it because there's nobody else? Or when you've had a chance to watch it, is he getting open?
Yes. The game on Sunday was tough because when CeeDee Lamb went out, all the Bears defense did was they put a corner on him and then they put a safety over the top, and they said, we dare you to try a receiver not named George Pickens. And they really couldn't. They got a big play to Kevontae Turpin. I think you are going to see a lot more of Turpin because Turpin has the most versatility, I think, of this receiving core now that CeeDee Lamb is out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw them utilize him when CeeDee Lamb went down on Sunday. But yeah, this is a situation where if I'm Brian Schottenheimer, I'm pulling George Pickens into my office either on Monday morning or on Wednesday morning. I'm going, hey, contract year. You have contract negotiations coming up next off season. This is a time for you to really establish your value and prove why you are worthy of a $30 million contract going into your second deal. So this would be a time that you focus on how to get number 3 the ball and you figure out how to do that. If they come out of the Packers game and Pickens has very similar stats where he's looking at 5 receptions, 60 yards, that's not going to benefit this offense, and you can only dump down to Jake Ferguson for 3-yard gains so often before this offense just eventually sputters out. And that's exactly what happened against the Bears. He had a career high 13 receptions, 0 points in the second half for this offense. It didn't do much help.
Did he break a tackle?
Yeah, that's another thing. He did end up breaking a couple, but that's another thing. His contact balance is not the best in the world. I think he's also learned from that experience against the Browns in Week 1 last year about when he suffered that knee sprain trying to break a tackle. I think he's playing safer football these days.
Well, one thing I learned in covering all pro sports, but all of it is that it doesn't matter what the noise is around you. You have to keep pushing forward and have hope and optimism and belief and all that stuff. So they're 1-2. You know who else is 1-2? The Baltimore Ravens. And that 1-2 feels a lot different than this 1-2 for good reason. Who's 2-1? The Cincinnati Bengals. So put some things in perspective. If you're a Cowboys fan or a coach or any of that stuff, Nick, you've got to have something to believe in, something to think we can do this. Through 3 weeks, what have you seen to say, okay, they'll be okay? Maybe they're not going to be, the Bills or whatever, but they'll be okay. What do you see?
Yeah, shout out to our producer, Candy Bolden, because that picture, I think, explains it perfectly. It starts with Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott is playing really good football right now. He's going to need help from his supporting cast, do not get me wrong, but he is playing good football right now. Javonte Williams has some real spark in the run game. He had 6.5 yards per carry, or the team had 6.5 yards per carry in that game against the Bears. They really couldn't utilize that run in the second half because they were playing from 10, 17 points behind. But, if they can stay within striking distance of a game and allow the running game to set up more opportunities in the pass game without CeeDee Lamb, that's really going to help and benefit this group. Another reason for optimism, Jadeveon Clowney's on the way. Deron Bland's on the way. I think their impact could help the defense. If Clowney can just get to the quarterback, that would be huge. This pass rush issue is one that's not being talked about enough, I feel like, as well. 3 sacks in 3 games, and you expected a lot more from this group. Even without Micah Parsons, there's a good chance Micah Parsons might have 3 sacks on his own on Sunday afternoon. And so, I think there are reasons for hope, but they need a lot of things to work together. They need a lot of things to work at the same time. And they haven't really had a whole lot of that through 3 weeks. And they have the best scoring weapon in the NFL in Brandon Aubrey. So,
well, devil's advocate, we talked about how well Dak Prescott has played, and his throws have been terrific. Also, in 2 of their 3 games, they have not scored a point in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't score a point in the second half in Philadelphia, obviously didn't in Chicago. Can we say a quarterback is playing really, really well when the offense goes 2 second halves out of 3 games without a point?
Yeah, I think when you look at the issues that both of those halves of football faced, the Miles Sanders fumble in Philadelphia didn't benefit things, and then the George Pickens, hey, let me hand an interception to the Chicago Bears, and plus territory did not help things either. So I do think the quarterback is playing well. I'll die on that hill right now because I do believe he's just not getting enough help from his supporting cast. I think he's seeing the field really well. And you look at 2 of the 3 interceptions he's thrown this year, and one of them was incomplete in the Giants game that the league addressed, and then one was just handed by George Pickens. So, I think this if this team rights the ship over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks without CeeDee Lamb, then it's because Dak Prescott's playing well.
I actually agree with you. You mentioned something there in the last part about Micah Parsons' potential sack total on Sunday night. The chosen one will return, a game that certainly the NBC people are thrilled about. The Green Bay Packers will bring Micah Parsons to AT&T Stadium on Sunday night for a 7:20 kickoff. This is not like Luka Doncic coming back to the American Airlines Center when he did in the spring with the LA Lakers. It's not. The relationship between the fan base and the city and the area is not quite as deep, even though the sport and the Cowboys are bigger, because Micah wasn't here as long and they didn't have any playoff success. So there's not similarities in that regard. Jerry Jones said there will not be any tribute to Micah Parsons on the video board, nor do I think there should be. But this one, and obviously Green Bay is coming off of a really embarrassing loss on Sunday to the Browns. But what do you think this is going to be like? What do you think this is going to be like, Nick, for him when he comes to AT&T on Sunday night?
I think he'll get a warm reception from the crowd, and I'll disagree with you on one point, Mac. I think there should be some sort of pregame tribute because he did give 4 really, really strong seasons for this team. And it's about the fan base more than it is about their personal relationship or Micah coming in to beat the Cowboys by 50 on Sunday. It's more than that. I think it's this would be for the fan base and allowing them that opportunity to kind of give a tribute and give a standing ovation, and then it's game time. But Jerry Jones said it wasn't appropriate at this time, and I was like, okay, does that mean it would be appropriate at another time down the line? Like, how does that work? But nevertheless, I think for Micah, knowing Micah and covering him over the course of the last few years, he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. There's no doubt. That chip is going to be the size of one of those tortilla chips that they don't cut in half. It's just a big baked tortilla, basically, that you get at some of those Mexican restaurants. It's going to be that big of a chip on his shoulder. I'm curious to see how he responds on the field because of it.
I think he is going to absolutely terrorize poor Tyler Guyton on Sunday night.
Yeah,
I think whoever is a tackle, I think he is going to be shot out of a cannon on every single play. And the only thing they can hope for is that they can run the ball. And in his dogged level of the pursuit of the passer is that he runs by plays.
Yeah.
I think he is going to kill Tyler Guyton for reasons you just mentioned. Combine that with an ungodly amount of talent and strength, I think he is going to absolutely kick their holy living butt.
You're right. You're right. I think he will eat Tyler Guyton's lunch. I think he will eat all of Terrence Steele's meals, though.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to flip. He'll rotate guys he kills. But I'm like, I don't know if you saw it. There's this great video floating around this after the games on Sunday where the Packers are blocking the Browns. And they've got 3 guys on Myles Garrett. 3 guys. And everybody else is being occupied.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett's doing his job. He's occupying basically the entire Browns, organization, which should free up somebody else to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And they can't do it.
Yeah.
And I could see, I'm like, well, okay, who do you leave in to chip? Like, is Javonte Williams going to block Micah Parsons?
Yeah.
You can't. What do they do? I mean, in all honesty, What are they going to do about that, Nick? I mean, how do they leave guys? Because they're going to have to leave guys back. Otherwise, he's going to kill both of them.
Yeah, I think the benefit that you do have is that Dak Prescott, his numbers against the blitz are some of the best in the NFL, and he's going to be facing it. that's probably the one thing that you can look at. You talk about, talented pass rushers like Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons opening up other guys. The leading sacker for the Green Bay Packers is Rashawn Gary with 4.5 sacks through 3 games. That's not because Rashawn Gary just woke up at the beginning of the year and was like, you know what, I'm going to get to the quarterback now.
Rashawn Gary's a good player.
Rashawn Gary's a hell of a player. Do not get me wrong. But I think with the addition of Micah Parsons, it is allowing a lot more one-on-one opportunities for Rashawn Gary, and he's been able to get home at the quarterback because of it.
My only hope for that is that they can run the ball. If you can run the ball, you can negate a pass rush. And there was this idea that somehow Micah Parsons was terrible against the run. He was not terrible against the run. He just wasn't. I don't know where this whole idea that somehow Micah Parsons sucks became like a thing for Cowboys fans. We're like, yeah, this is a great trade. You can sit there and say, okay, we can make the best out of the trade, but don't diminish the player. The guy's really, really good. Yeah. And this concept, like, oh, he was just a ghost against the run, is not fair. But the best way to negate a pass rush, run the ball. And sometimes that means you have to run right at him. Terrence Steele, good luck. Tyler Guyton, even better. That's funny. You think Steele's been worse than Guyton. I'm like, I think this is like a battle of 1A and 1B.
Yeah, or what's the last number that you could possibly Infinity A, Infinity B.
All right, let's get our prediction time. Green Bay comes in as a 7-point favorite. 7-point favorite. The over-under on this game, and I don't think I normally don't mention over-unders, but this one kind of struck me. 47.5. Is
that just for the Packers total?
Yeah, that's the first half Packers total, by the way. 7 points is a heavy number. This is an up and down league. We've seen that forever. Obviously, Dallas's defense gives you no reason to think that they're going to stop Jordan Love. You've got Micah Parsons coming back for the first time we just mentioned. All right, what you got for me? Packers, 7-point favorites. What's going to happen?
The Lions game from last year when it was 47-9. I feel very similar vibes about this going into this one. I think the Packers cover handily. I don't see how the Cowboys can keep it a one-possession game. There's too many issues on defense. They have too much to figure out on offense. This is going to be the week that they really have to just throw the kitchen sink and see what works, because you have 2 winnable games coming out of this one that you have to win at that point to get to 3-3. And so this week I'm trying to see what works and, cutting my losses and understanding that this is not going to be a close game. Had
Green Bay not, so you're saying Packers straight, Packers to cover.
Yeah.
I would have disagreed about that had Green Bay not lost that game in Cleveland. That's a bad loss. You can't lose to the Browns if you're any good. And I know they're professionals and they pay their players too and blah, blah, blah. Joe Flacco's 58 years old. And they gave that game away. I'm telling you, he's got the Midas touch. But so I'm agreeing with you, Nick. Give me the Cowboys, give me the Packers to cover without much of a problem. All right, Candy, wake up. You can turn it off. I know you're still celebrating your big nuptials. Nick, it was great talking to you. Cowboys host the Packers on Sunday Night Football at 7:20 p.m. Probably going to be over at 7:35 p.m. for all of your Cowboys coverage needs, as well as TCU, which plays at Arizona State on Friday night. Please be sure to check us out on StarTelegram.com. He is Mr. Nick Harris. I am Mac Engel.
Can I mention?
Yes, please.
Can I mention? You had a great story on UNT quarterback Drew Mestemaker. Zesty Mesty.
Do you know Zesty Mesty's story?
Zesty Mesty is one of the best stories in college football right now. And I covered that Austin Vandegrift team when he was the backup. Was always told, hey, it's unfortunate that Deuce Adams is playing for Austin Vandegrift because Drew Mestemaker is great in his own right. Walks on at North Texas, starts as a 6-string quarterback. And now the North Texas Mean Green 4-0 and have the second best playoff odds of any group of 5 team going into week 5. Hey, man, I'm just saying, you heard it here first. UNT in the playoffs.
Don't rule it out. Don't rule it out. And I was talking to somebody last week about it. Thank you. I appreciate the shout out on that one, because when I stumbled into that story, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, how the hell does this happen? He's a punter and a safety?
Yep.
And then I called somebody who's like, yeah, he was the starter. He started for the B team in 9th grade. And then he got stuck behind a great athlete who's the Baylor catcher and another guy who's now a quarterback at the University of Louisville. And they couldn't get him on the field. So he's a safety and a punter. And he had no recruiting ranking number at all. And he has to drive to Denton for a tryout.
Yep.
And the coach is like, okay, we just need an extra arm. There's a lot of similarities when Tony Romo got the invite to the combine. He wasn't going to go to the combine. They just needed somebody to throw warm-up passes to receivers. And that's how his story started in the NFL. And I'm like, how does everybody miss on this kid? And normally you would say, well, how do you miss on this kid like Cam Ward or John Mateer, who was at Washington State, now doing really well at the University of Oklahoma? The thing that was so mystifying to me about Cam Ward is that Cam Ward went to camps. Well, Mestemaker, he had nothing. And now you're right. They're 4-0. You look at that schedule. You look at the way they've won games. Don't rule it out.
You mentioned Cam Ward. You mentioned John Mateer. We've talked about Drew Mestemaker. You know what all three of those guys have in common?
Are they all Texans?
They are, but they were all recruited out of high school by UNT head coach Eric Morris.
No.
Eric Morris is a quarterback wizard. And when you talk about the quarterback prowess of, some of these guys, there's not a better quarterback evaluator, I feel like, in college football than Eric Morris. And that's just not me with this hat on. Let me take this hat off so I can say that appropriately.
It's good hair, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's hat hair,
Yeah.
Eric Morris, when it comes to the quarterback position, man, he just continues to hit on names you've never heard of. And so
you know who he learned from? You know more about football than I do, and when I look this up,
I heard Eric Morris's story, but I'm forgetting it at the moment.
He was a Mike Leach guy.
He was a Mike Leach guy. He sure was.
God rest his soul. One thing Mike Leach could do, he could find a quarterback who could fit his system.
Yeah.
And if you look at all those quarterbacks that Mike Leach had at Texas Tech when they were putting up numbers, I don't think any of them really went on to the NFL and killed it. But he knew how to design an offense, and he knew how to get a quarterback that would fit that system and put up some points. And if you look at what Eric Morris has done, and it's funny you should say that. You're the second guy since I wrote that story who said that to me about Eric Morris. Was like, this guy is top tier quarterback guy. And I know Lincoln Riley gets all that for obvious reasons because he had Heisman guys, and those guys get that kind of attention. But to do what he did with Cam Ward, the Cam Ward thing still blows me away. Yeah. But the Mestemaker, like, just to look at him and say, yeah, there might be something there. And now in his first season as a starter, to do what he's doing, go look at his stats. He looks great. And he's gone after the year. Everybody knows he's gone. All right. Candy is bored. She's asking us to wrap it up. So we will, Candy. Nick, it was great seeing you. Go Mean Green. Cowboys Packers Sunday night. Keep it here on StarTelegram.com. We will see you next week for another edition of Cowboys Overtime.